Well, I want to welcome all of you here tonight. Generally speaking, we don't have this many people come to a planning commission meeting, and I just want to reiterate that's what this is. It's not a Super Bowl party. It's not a debate watch or anything of that nature. So if you're here for that reason, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm going to wait just a few more minutes. One of our commissioners, Mr. Lazaro, is not yet here. I did speak to him today. I believe his intention was to be here, but I know he had some childcare pick-up and drop-off issues, so I want to give him just maybe 2 minutes more. And if he's not here, we'll just go ahead and proceed.
It is comfortable, I'll say that much.
Well, the back goes up and down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can have,
What's nice about it is
Mr. Lazaro has not arrived yet. We are going to go ahead with the meeting. Considering the time that we have, we need to use it wisely, and obviously there are many of you here this evening. So the Special Planning Commission meeting for September 11th, 2024 is now in order. I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and may we have the roll call, please?
sure. Commissioner Nendek,
here.
Commissioner Foster,
Here.
Commissioner Campisi,
Here.
Vice Chairman Lazaro, absent. Chairman Wade.
Here.
Chairman Wade, you have a quorum.
Okay. And I don't know if Derek is going to make it. I know that he had some child care issues, but he also indicated that he may well have to recuse himself from consideration of this item. So I will just mention that. Before we get started tonight, I would like to make a few opening remarks. First and foremost, as you can see, and I've already alluded to it, we have a large number of people in attendance tonight, and no doubt you're interested in the conditional use permit that we'll be considering tonight pertaining to the neighborhood church. All of you who wish to speak will be afforded an opportunity to speak if you wish. However, I would encourage you to be respectful of the time that we have this evening. Please, if you wish to speak, please try to not be redundant. If a speaker before you has stated essentially the position you want to state in your time at the podium, simply stand, indicate your name, and tell us you support that position so we can be respectful of time. If everyone speaks, we'll miss the evening news at 11. Okay, now, for those of you who are not familiar with the process that we follow at Planning Commission meetings, our process in considering an application, like the matter before us tonight, has essentially three parts. The first part is that the city staff presents the staff report. I think you probably have all seen it. It's posted with the agenda, attached to the agenda on the city website. So the city staff will present that staff report. Commissioners will have an opportunity to ask questions that they might have of the city staff. Concluding that discussion, we will open the consideration of our item for public hearing. The applicant will have initially 5 minutes to present the basis for their application, the nature of it, the reasons for it, and so forth. They will have 5 minutes. They will also have another 5 minutes at the end of all public comments for any further comments they might have or to address any of the public comments that have been made in the interim. So, again, applicant, 5 minutes at the beginning, 5 minutes at the end. All other persons wishing to speak, and that includes the applicant, should fill out a speaker card, name and address. Please let us know who you are so we can be sure. Pass that card forward to Jeffrey, and it will make its way to me. If you wish to make public comments, you'll have a total of 3 minutes. We have the magic clocks up here, and this is not, we're not trying to run roughshod over you, but we do want to, everybody needs to be respectful of the time here, so each individual comment is limited to 3 minutes. I will gently try to get you to wrap up if you tend to go long, and I'll be a little bit more abrupt if you go too long. So that's the process for the public hearing. Once we hear all the public comments and the applicants had their opportunity for final remarks, we'll close the public hearing, and then the matter will come before the commission, and we will discuss and decide it. So that is the process tonight. And we'll move now to approval of the agenda. Do commissioners wish to make any changes to tonight's agenda?
No.
All right. Hearing none, do we have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda as presented?
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll
Second? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0. We will then turn to communications from the public. Members of the public are now invited to address the commission on matters that are not, I emphasize not, on tonight's agenda. Under California law, the commission is prohibited from discussing or taking any action on any matter that is not on the agenda unless the matter is deemed to be an emergency under state law or unless the matter arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda. So is anyone, I don't have a speaker card from anyone wishing to make public comments. Does anyone want to make public comments on a matter that's not on the agenda? Okay. Then we will move forward to the consent agenda. And we have one item on the consent agenda this evening, which is the approval of the commission's the minutes of the commission's regular meeting on July 16th, 2024. I understand that there will be some minor corrections to one of the conditions on item 4. Otherwise, does any commissioner have any concerns with the minutes as presented?
Yeah, I have one comment to just add the date, July 16th, 2024, to the header or somewhere on the top of the minutes. Please, thank you. And then are you going to cover item number 4,000 via Cartolina?
I think, as I understand it, that correct, it was misstated on the minutes, but I understand that our director of community development is going to make the necessary corrections so that it reads correctly. So I don't think we have to discuss that any further. Okay, do we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from our July 16th meeting?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from July 16th, 2024.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved from the July 16th meeting, and we will now turn to new public hearings. And item 2 is a conditional use permit 001-24. It's an application for amendments to the conditional use permit 87-3 pertaining to the neighborhood church at 415 Paseo del Mar. May we have the staff report, please?
Excuse me, I need to recuse myself? I need to recuse myself.
Okay?
Why? Say the reason. You have to say the reason.
It's my neighborhood.
Yeah. Commissioner Nendek has indicated that she needs to recuse herself, and that is due to the fact that she lives on Via Media, which is within 500 feet of the neighborhood church. So we are a commission of 3. We still have a quorum, and we still can consider and decide the matter at hand. So, we'll back to the staff report then.
Okay. I'm just waiting for her to. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chair Wade, members of the Planning Commission, and members of the public. Tonight's presentation is regarding a conditional use permit for amendments to conditional use permit 87-3, conditions of approval for the neighborhood church. The neighborhood church has submitted a letter of intent to amend the conditions of approval for an existing CUP, as mentioned prior. The property is located within the R1 zoning district, which conditionally permits churches and related uses. Per the applicant, the requested amendments are being proposed to update some of the limitations, broaden existing limits to enable the church to allow for a small number of additional wedding events, and to allow filming to the same extent as other properties in the city, subject to the acquisition of a filming permit. There are no physical alterations to the existing property associated with this associated with this CUP, and as such, no coastal development permit is required. Just to provide a brief background about the history of the CUP that we're discussing tonight. This conditional use permit was submitted for the review of an addition and remodel of a fellowship hall attached to the existing church building on the subject property in 1987. The CUP was required to regulate activities and functions that would occur on the property. The proposal was reviewed by the Planning Commission at first on December 15th, 1987, and it was continued due to a few reasons that are outlined in the staff report. The applicant later returned to the Planning Commission with the requested items, and ultimately first went to Planning Commission and later went to City Council, where it was approved on May 9th, 1989, subject to the conditions of approval. And those conditions of approval are included in the staff report. So for the matter at hand tonight, I will go over the proposed changes to the conditional use permit. I'll first state the condition number and state how it's changing. So the second condition, number 2, regarding receptions, section 2B, increase from 18 to 30 wedding receptions per year. Per sections 1B and 1C, the church can currently have up to 114 weddings at the neighborhood church, and CUP 87-3 limits the number of wedding receptions to 18 per year. Section 2C, delete the section in its entirety for sit-down dinners at wedding receptions. CUP 87-3 currently prohibits wedding reception sit-down dinners. Sit-down dinners are defined in the CUP as the services of a meal at individual place settings at fixed locations. Moving along to condition 4, use of subject property, amends condition 4B to delete Yule Parlor Parade and replace with Christmas pageant. This pageant would approximately last for approximately 3 evening hours for 1 night per year. Moving to section 5, parking. Section 5A, change the definition of large weddings currently defined as 50 or more persons are present on the subject property at a given time to 100 or more persons are present on the subject property at any given time. Additional word changes were made to clarify the role of the uniformed traffic director. Section 5C, delete the section requiring that the church include written admonition that persons using church facilities park their cars within designated parking lots on the church property and not on any streets in the adjoining neighborhood. Section 9, maintenance of log, delete the section requiring that the church maintain a log of all weddings and social functions and have them available for city review periodically. Moving to section 10, or condition 10, periodic meetings. Delete the section requiring that the neighborhood church hold a yearly meeting with a representative of the Malakoff Cove Homeowners Association to discuss compliance with the terms of the conditional use permit. Condition 11, dismissal of lawsuit, remove this condition. And finally, condition 22, which was added, filming on property, including condition clarifying that the neighborhood church is able to apply for a commercial film permit as prescribed by the PALOS Verdes Estates Municipal Code. Conditions of approval associated with each individual film permit will be established by the city manager on a case-by-case basis and tailored to each filming event. This condition does not grant a commercial film permit nor the absolute right to conduct commercial filming on church property. The findings required to approve are outlined in staff's report, as is staff's recommendation. This concludes my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have for me at this time. Thank you.
Do commissioners have any questions of staff? I know I do.
Go ahead.
So we have a conditional use permit that's been in effect for over 35 years.
That's correct.
Is there any indication in the records of the city that this matter has come back before the Planning Commission or before the City Council due to any alleged violation of any of the conditions of the CUP?
I'm not aware of any record of that information.
And there is a process, however, isn't there? If a neighbor was aggrieved by an alleged violation of one of the conditions, and I think that's happened before, we have handled alleged violations of CUPs, and it's come back, and we've considered that. So there is a process there for that to be done.
There is, yes. It's outlined in I can pull up the code section for revocation of a CUP, but there is a process.
So one of the items that's under discussion is public parking on both sides of Paseo del Mar. My understanding is there's currently no restrictions on public parking there. There's not a restriction for parking on one side or any permit parking or anything of that nature, right?
That's correct.
So it appears to me that persons who come to the church or even come to that area to observe the bluff or whatever, can legitimately park on either side of the street.
That's correct.
Okay. So you mentioned sections 9 and 10 of the CUP. Section 9 requires the church to maintain a log of all activities and make it reasonably available to the city for review. Do you know whether or not the city in the past 35 years has ever sat down with the church to go over this log of activities?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Okay. Those are my questions.
Jeffrey, I have a question with regards to the sit-down dinners. So does that exclude like a buffet type dinner? Or do we know if that type of function goes on?
Oh, could you turn on your mic, Commissioner Foster? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you not hear me? If there was a buffet type dinner as opposed to a sit-down dinner, is that also excluded, or do we know if that function goes on?
I don't think it's mentioned in the code, but we could definitely include that language to exclude that in the condition if it's,
We know if it currently goes on.
oh, no, we're not aware of that.
So does it currently go on, or are
Sit
you
down.
aware, are you not aware that it currently goes on?
No, so sit-down dinners are currently prohibited.
Right.
And so that includes any type of dinners at all.
Any dinners?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
It
Even if it was a
wouldn't, it
buffet.
wouldn't preclude buffets, would it? I mean, if you had, stand-up cocktail tables and a buffet, it wouldn't,
As
current
it's,
CUP would not preclude that.
sure, right. I'm not aware of that has happened at the church site. But going forward, if we would like to include language that prohibits that, we can definitely include that language.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Graham, on section number 2 of the proposed changes for the number of receptions, so 18 receptions are allowed now. They're asking to go from 18 to 30.
Yes.
And then how did we arrive at so I guess 114 weddings? These are two separate categories of events, right? A wedding is a wedding ceremony. A reception is different than a ceremony, obviously. It's my understanding that a reception must be tied to a wedding ceremony at the property. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so what's the total number now of, I guess, is there a total number of wedding events are we talking here? Or is it just the categories, the 30 receptions and I guess the 114 weddings is remaining unchanged?
Give me 1 second, I'm pulling up.
It doesn't seem like they're asking to increase the number of wedding ceremonies. Is that?
It's my understanding. I think we can ask the applicant that question.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
yeah,
save
I'm
that for
sorry.
the applicant. Thanks, Chip.
What's a little bit confusing as well is there was also another category, which is social functions, which is carved out separately than weddings, and there's a limitation on those as well, based on size. That's under section 6, 6I, double I. It's 100, functions of 100 persons or more is limited to 24 a year, and functions of less than 100 is 48 a year.
Right, so there's a difference between social functions and weddings. I'm sorry, I was looking at, I'm sorry, what was your question?
I'm just pointing out that there's a difference between those two different categories.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they're proposing to change social functions, though, right?
No.
I believe it's just weddings that they're changing.
All right, other questions?
But I think actually back on the social function, we'll ask the applicant, but aren't they trying to recategorize the size?
Right, from 50 to 100.
100, yeah,
But
okay.
that's what I was getting at, because that's strictly weddings, and I wonder if that has an impact on the social functions as well. That's different. So we're talking about weddings of 50 or more.
Well, I think what we're talking about in terms of size of large wedding, I think the size, number of people is a factor in the definition of large wedding for the sake of whether or not the church needs to provide a uniform traffic director. I think that's the context. I don't think the church is requesting any changes with regard to.
Well, the question is whether or not, if we make changes to that, how does it impact section 6 with regards to social functions? Because that also deals with size of events. Or are they treated separately?
I think they're treated separately. My sense is that they are.
And that's my question to Jeffrey.
They are treated separately because it's, if we're looking at 5A, which I think, so we're talking about 5A, and large weddings they're wanting to change the definition from 50 to 100 for large weddings. Social functions is described, has a different definition, and so it would be treated differently.
So the impact of what they're requesting is primarily the traffic director?
That's my understanding, but the applicant can best describe that.
And just finally, really, real quick, storm drain number 30, Is this an issue? Did that already get built? It looks like, it sounds like they need to have an easement. It seems like this is an old issue.
That is an old,
Okay.
it's an old issue, yes.
All right, no further questions.
Okay. We will then proceed to public hearing, and we will open with the applicant's first 5 minutes. And please tell us who you are.
I'm Jerry Woodham. I'm on the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
It's not on. I don't think it's on. Turn the mic on.
Okay, I'm not sure that the mic is on, but when it does get on, please speak directly into it. There we go.
Okay, got it? Before we begin our presentation, there's one clarification we need to make. In the staff presentation, they mentioned that we're applying for filming permits. That is not a part of this application at all. And in fact, we were notified that the filming permit is not appropriate to be included in the conditional use permit, but that we should apply directly to the city manager. So it is an error to include that as one of the things we're asking for.
Okay. Point well made.
Okay, now, as I said, I'm Jerry Woodham. I've been a member of the neighborhood church since 2017. Member of the trustees, board of trustees, and the past chair. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to the Planning Commission. Again, we're requesting what we consider to be minor changes to the conditional use permit. Just background, the neighborhood church is affiliated with the United Church of Christ, and we began services at this site in the early 50s. I'd like to remind the commission that we do hold certain city events at the church. It's not just for our benefit. Since the cup was signed in 1989, we've tried to be a good neighbor. We envision ourselves as living in the community, and we want to do things that don't disrupt the community. At this location, we've had PVE cares and PVE police department events. The police blood drive was at this site this year and last year. If you remember, Reverend Dr. Young, who was our former senior minister, was the chaplain for the police department. And it was the site for the PVE Memorial for Fallen Officers, held in 2015. Jim Hendrickson, who was your former city manager, was unfortunately at that event in 1994. We hold the annual Christmas pageant that's open to the entire community, and many PVE residents actually attend services and are members of the church. And outside the community, between 2018 and 2023, we've donated over $115,000 for homelessness, mental health, veterans, and relief efforts. I'd like to also dispel any rumors that the neighborhood church is in financial difficulty. I've heard this recently. We've had a balanced budget for the last 7 years. Like most churches, inflation has affected us, and it will affect us going forward. These changes will provide some slight additional revenue for the neighborhood church, and for that we're welcome. In fact, our attendance has increased in the last 12 months. We have an endowment. We have reserves to sustain us in the event of a recession. We have invested heavily in the site, and we'll continue to do that because we want that to look like in first-class shape. So these cup changes, we think, will have little or no impact on the adjoining neighborhood. And if you want to set up some sort of a review process going forward, we're certainly willing to do that. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Steve, who's going to talk about our views on specific issues.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we pause the clock for a minute? Because the issue regarding the filming took 25 seconds off, and those are needed. Those are needed, I promise.
You're good. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Commission Chair and Planning Commissioners. I'd like to personally thank all of you for your unpaid services as Planning Commissioners for our wonderful city of Palos Verdes Estates. My name is Steve Friedrich, and my wife, Marianne, and I have lived at 404 Paseo del Mar across the street from the neighborhood church for over 19 years, and we're members of the neighborhood church. And I'm going to talk fast. I'd like to first ask all attendees here tonight who support these amendments being presented by the neighborhood church to please stand at this time. Please. Thank you very much. Don't take too much time from me. First of all, I'd like to establish that the church's requested amendments in review tonight are between the City of Palos Verdes Estates and the neighborhood church. Any and all references to amendments to a document are directed to this conditional use permit number 87-3 and no other documents. These amendments before us tonight do not increase traffic, change parking lot sizes, nor add or remove signage or filming. Okay? Signage also. These requested amendments only address changes in the conditional use permit 87-3 in 7 ways. I'll be addressing 4 of them during my period here. Increase the number of wedding receptions allowed from 18 per year to 30 per year. We do not know of any issues to date that our neighbors might have had with any prior wedding receptions conducted on our church properties. Allow the neighborhood church the same wedding reception dinner format as the La Venta Inn has been providing in their wedding receptions in their neighborhood. That is, currently neighborhood church cannot have a sit-down dinner at their wedding receptions. A sit-down dinner is defined in CUP 87-3 as the service of a meal at individual place settings at fixed locations. The La Venta Inn has had this service of meals at individual place settings and all at their facility for many years, and have not heard of any issues, even during their hottest debates, of a problem with the La Venta Inn having in-building sit-down dinners. And I haven't heard of any real reason behind the decision 35 years ago why the reason the neighborhood church should have, why the neighborhood church was restricted in this way. Hence, it appears there is no reason the neighborhood church should not also have wedding receptions with sit-down dinners. The need, this is the 4th, I believe 3rd or 4th, the need for a uniform traffic director. Need for a uniform traffic director at weddings to be increased from 50 individuals on property representing about 25 vehicles to 100 individuals on property representing about 50 vehicles for a uniformed traffic director is not needed for just 25 vehicles. So we're requesting 100 individuals be the breaking point for whether we're required for a traffic director or not.
Steve, you're speaking fast, but your additional 30 seconds is up, but you got another 5 minutes at the end.
I gave him an extra minute.
Darn it.
So let me ask you, I think I heard you say that in the 35-plus years that the current CUP has been in effect, there have been no serious issues with noise or parking or anything with the neighbors in that area.
Okay, the answer to that is twofold. Number one, yes, there have been issues with parking. Those issues have been that not with the weekly services that are held there, it's with those individuals that come for a one-time visit for a wedding or a memorial service. During that time, we try to notify them that and we put signage out, and they weren't doing the best job of this years ago. One of my neighbors worked with me for a number of months to try different methods for signage and determined that, in fact, the signage that was out there that was trying to comply to the CUP, the conditional use permit, was actually causing people to park on the even side, the resident side of the street, versus the church side. So we changed the signage. I covered them because we got a notice of violation from the City of Palos Verdes Estates. And so we covered those signs that were out, that were permanent, and they were on city property. And instead we have A-frame sandwich signs that we've got that we put out in 4 locations. And from everything I've heard from those residents around me on Paseo del Mar, they have greatly and vastly improved the parking problem, especially for the resident side of the street. And it is a city street that the church cannot tell people they cannot park there. They can encourage, we will encourage and all, but we cannot tell them they can't park on a city street.
Right, okay. Any complaints about noise from activities, weddings, receptions, anything like that?
I have heard people say that from their balcony that during certain times they can hear music from the church. And we can control that as best we can. Well, I think the main thing is we definitely, I believe, I bought a decibel meter. We try to comply to city ordinances. I believe we meet those city ordinances. And you can also hear birds chirping in the street. All
right. So, on the issue of sit-down dinners, do you currently serve any meals or beverages at receptions?
Not as a sit-down dinner. They are they are more in a buffet style.
Okay.
They're not place settings laid out, because that's the requirement by the existing conditional
Right.
use permit. That's 35.
Okay, so they're buffet service?
Right.
And I would assume like cocktail tables or something like that?
Again, unlike what the La Venta Inn uses in their neighborhood.
Okay. Okay. So back to question, your sections 9 and 10 of the CUP, has the city ever approached the church to sit down and review the activities log that's been maintained for the last 35 years?
To our knowledge, we have never been requested by the city of Palos Verdes Estates to review any document nor have any meetings. And I do have, can I add something?
Sure.
The conditional use permit, 87-3, and this is really critical, and I have to correct, if you will, a statement made by one of the city staff, and that is, in this document, it refers to the association. It does not define that association. That association could be the association for window washers. It does not define what, in other documents, there's another document where it specifies that association means this. In this city document that stands alone, it does not define it.
Okay, and that's under section 10, right? The reference to association? I think it's for...
Yes.
It's for the regular annual meetings. Have any of those meetings been held with any association?
They have had, and I can't speak to it directly because I have never sat in on them, to my understanding, and I can look over my shoulder to see whether many were held, or with any other association. Did we have, when was the last meeting we've had with them, approximately? Under a different document.
We've met very continuously. I've been the church committee representative for 12 years, and I'm currently at CA.
If there's going to be
Okay, I'm
speaking
sorry.
in the audience, you have to go up to the mic, otherwise we do not catch it.
If there, no, if there is an individual who can answer that question, if he would just speak later in public comments, then just answer that question for me.
Me?
Not to do it now. If you don't know, this gentleman or other people in the audience can come up and speak
You can
to it.
speak to it better.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Steve, I have a question for you. One of the things I've heard, and maybe you can corroborate this or not, that there's an issue with regards to the utility of the two lots. You have a Lot A and Lot B, and primarily because people come from one direction, they don't know that there's a
Right.
second lot.
Right.
And I guess your A boards are trying to improve that. When you have a director of traffic, isn't that purpose of that director of traffic to direct people to the second or to the primary lot, I would say?
The law enforcement, and number one, it's a uniform traffic director.
Yeah.
Doesn't indicate law enforcement, and I've said this many times, it could be a Carl's Jr. employee in their uniform, a uniform traffic director. It could be a Boy or a Girl Scout. Currently, we use and pay the Palos Verdes Police Department to manage the street as best they can. The understanding from the church side is that the officer out there will request that people park within one of the two parking lots. To my understanding, he cannot tell them they can't park on a city street unless he has cause.
Yeah, that's not really my question. My
Okay.
question is, if you have the director,
Right.
can't that individual direct them to the lot that may be underutilized?
Yes. The answer is yes.
And wouldn't that alleviate some of the issues with regards to street parking?
And it does.
Okay, and so if that's the case, then why do we want to reduce the requirement of that individual? That's helping. the situation.
Okay, I'm not understanding. What, reduce
Well, you're
what
talking about
requirement?
reducing the requirement for size of the event.
Oh, because, again, the entire topic of change here that we're discussing is relative, or regarding whether to have a uniform traffic director when there's currently 50 people, which represent about 25 vehicles. We feel that's kind of a low number to have as a trigger when 100 people, in other words, about 50 vehicles, would be more reasonable.
So I don't want words in your mouth, but I guess what you're saying then is that on the smaller weddings, 50 or under, it's not an issue.
Right.
It becomes an issue on the larger ones,
Yes.
and that's why it's required. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So one last question.
Sure.
And that is, do you have, I'm sure you have agreements with parties for your weddings and receptions, contracts.
Right.
Do your contracts provide any requirement for the applicant, the party, to notify attendees or guests that parking on-site is available and encouraging them to park on-site?
To my knowledge, they do a verbal, but is not in a written document.
Okay. Would you be opposed to putting something
Absolutely not.
like that in a written document? Okay.
I've been working with neighbors that have approached me with ideas in the neighborhood, and I've worked very closely with them and very collaboratively, and we've had a lot of positive results from it. And I will, and the church will continue to work with this stuff where it's reasonable. So.
Okay.
And to that point, we've just recently agreed to put that into our documents, a recommendation that they not park on city streets because there is parking available.
Okay.
That will be in the document.
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Friedrich, 2 questions real quick. The hours of operation, so events must conclude on or before 9:30 PM, and then vehicles must be removed from the parking lots on or before 10 PM. That's the current hours of operation. Those
Yes.
are going to remain in place.
Yes.
The events themselves, and for full disclosure, Marco, I think you were going to ask this, but I did have an ex parte conversation with Mr. Friedrich outside of this meeting, for full disclosure. I asked these similar questions, but I told him I would ask these, in this public session as well. So hours of operation. The second question, Mr. Friedrich, is all of these events are inside the buildings, right? These are
That's
not
correct.
outside in any patio?
Weddings are inside the buildings. Any form of buffet or sit-down dinner is within the building, within the same building, in a fellowship portion of the building versus the main sanctuary where weddings are performed.
And is there any limitations on when there is live music? And I maybe I'm misstating the live music. Is live music not allowed at all? Or if it's allowed, it has to be inside?
And I haven't looked at that portion of it in a while, but as I recall, there's no restriction on live music. It cannot be amplified electronically. That it reaches outside, and I believe the statement was, the number was, and it may be a different document, but I'll say this, I believe it might be the conditional use permit as well that says that can be heard beyond the property line of the neighborhood church.
Yep.
And then finally, in general, the 18, I believe, the 18 receptions that you're currently hosting annually, are they all mostly sort of within the summer months? It's not spread throughout the
Can
year?
I look over my shoulder to get a nod? Because I don't track all of these.
One comment on the reception issue. Because we cannot do sit-down dinners, we effectively have almost 0 receptions being held now. So there aren't more than a handful of receptions.
Thank you.
And one follow-up, as far as where the events are held, again, the wedding itself is held inside. The receptions will be held inside. Photography is one of the attractive features of the site is the site. So the photography takes place outside, obviously, but the ceremony itself is inside.
Okay. And I assume that if there were to be sit-down dinners, all of those activities would be inside, not outside?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. And I will, for the record, also state that I had a conversation with Mr. Friedrich at the site prior to this meeting where he reviewed what items of request were being made, and we had a discussion at that time.
And I as well will disclose that I had a conversation with Mr. Friedrich at 404 Paseo de Mara, and also Lily and Victor at 420 Paseo de Mara.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You'll have 5 minutes at the end. So now we will turn to public comments. I have a number of what I call pink slips here. Doesn't mean we're firing you, it means we're calling you up to speak. The first speaker will be, I think, Tom Melberg, and followed by Renee Screep.
Good evening. I'm Tom Melberg. My wife and I, Pat, have moved to PVE in 1979, so we've been residents for 45 years. We live in Malaga Cove, and we're also members of the Malaga Cove Homeowners Association.
Whereabouts do you live in Malaga Cove?
Via Samante.
Okay.
Yeah. like I said, we've been here for 45 years. We've raised 2 daughters. We're very active in the community in various ways. I've been on the board of 4 organizations here in the area, and I'm currently on the board at the neighborhood church as a trustee. I'm in my 6th year as a trustee. When the church came to the city 35 years ago, the membership was over 650 people at the church. Over the years, it's declined as it has throughout the United States, and today we only have 250 members, a significant drop from when the conditional use permit was issued. We as a board member, we're constantly looking to balance our budget and finding revenue sources, and this amendment would help sustain this church going forward. So, and I don't think it'll have any or very little impact on the neighborhood. So I would urge you to approve this. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Renee Scribe, followed by Vince, I think it's Leclerc. Welcome back, you're a familiar face.
Yes. My name is René Scribe. I live at 356 Vialmar. I'm a 49-year resident, and I'm the last surviving signer of the 1989 cooperation agreement between the Malaga Cove Homeowner Association and the neighborhood church. We are mainly concerned with any expansion of events in Lower Malaga Cove due to the limited exit facilities that are provided by our single-lane roads. When an event ends and many cars leave at once, like after a wedding, they create a backup on Vialmar, as well as on PV Drive West in both directions. This bumper-to-bumper gridlock traffic generates exhaust fumes, sometimes forcing us to close our windows, and prevents us and our neighbors from exiting on our own driveways. This also prevents and retards the fire and police traffic. These conditions occur primarily on Saturdays, and when the surf and the beaches are most desirable to the public. We are all aware that Malaga Cove is a beautiful location. Therefore, local organizations request city permissions to hold intended fundraisers in Lower Malaga Cove. These events further impact our traffic. The thought that for economic reasons the neighborhood church would be allowed to turn Lower Malaga Cove into an annual 5-week virtual movie studio, as we have seen in the past, turns into a nightmare for all residents, particularly those close to the neighborhood church. We therefore urge you to carefully consider the impact of each one of the request changes before modifying the successful 35-year-old binding cooperation agreement that we still have today with the neighborhood church. Thank you for your consideration.
So, Mr. Scribe, let me ask you, are you representing the Malaga Cove Homeowners Association, or are you here as a private resident?
I'm as a private resident.
Okay.
I am a member of the Malaga Cove Homeowners Association.
Understand. Okay, thank you. I assume also, being up on Via Almar, with all the activities and soccer and baseball and whatnot, you have traffic issues as well with...
Indeed. All this aggravates, as everybody wants to do their thing in Lower Malaga Cove.
Right. It's a beautiful place, I can understand. Thank you very much. Okay, this is, the next speaker after Vince will be Lily. And I know I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly.
That's all right, no worries. My name's Vince Ciceri, longtime resident. We own a couple of homes in Malaga Cove. First question I have First of all, thank you for the opportunity, but I have a question for you all. Any increase in revenue to the church, does that contribute to any additional revenue to the city?
I honestly don't know.
Well, is there tax revenue generated for the city? Is there any additional revenue generated for the city as a result of increased commercial activity at the church?
Are you aware, Marco, of any?
Filming, maybe?
No, I'm not aware of any revenue for the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to follow up on a point that Steve brought up. He asked for everyone to stand that was in support of the CUP. Can we get those same people to stand again? So can I ask that of the people standing, those that do not live in Lower Malaga Cove to sit down?
I'm really not sure that's relevant because we have other people who I think are going to speak tonight opposed to this who may not live in Lower
Okay,
Malaga.
so I'm within my time frame, correct?
Well, I'm just
Okay.
stating my point.
Okay, so we agree to disagree. There is relevance because it creates tremendous public safety, risk, expense, pollution, noise, and community impact, not only to Lower Malaga Cove, but to the city. So with my limited time, I just wanted to emphasize those points, but they are worthy of consideration.
Okay. Let me ask you, you live at 420 Paseo Del Mar, which is right across from the church?
Yes.
And I asked staff earlier whether there had been any complaints to the city about activities at the church.
No, and so we haven't formally complained. We have complained to some of our neighbors, including Steve. We have recordings of music and noise that clearly expands beyond the confines of the property. Furthermore, as a longtime resident, property owner, taxpayer, the governance of the church has changed since 1967 when I moved here, okay? At one time, I think the church was a better steward in the community. I think Steve has done a tremendous job of demonstrating some effort. It's showing some positive impact as it pertains to the parking. It's admirable that he takes the time to give that time to the community, but it's not best efforts, and the CUP speaks about best efforts. I have photos of staff that park outside the parking lot at the church, and no better opportunity than to lead by example by having staff parking in their own parking lots. So I have a litany of points, but I do want to emphasize that it does have adverse risk, impact, and expense to the city.
Okay, thank you. All right, Lily, followed by Mark Paulin.
So you met my husband, Vince. I live at 420 Paseo Del Mar. The neighbor that Steve was referring to as far as trying to work out this deal with the parking is me. I don't know if you can hear this. That's from my balcony.
Sorry.
Can you? Well, I've been having problems with my phone, but if you want to take my phone a little closer, you can hear the noise to my balcony across the street from their event. It's not
What event was that?
It was on July 16th, 2023.
And
It was one of his, it was when Steve and the other gentlemen were out there with their noise decibel. I saw them with their noise decibel, so I brought out my phone. And I guess you can't hear it. In any event, I want to go a little further. I want to highlight that it was mentioned that the church does have a lot of money, or some money, and now they're comparing themselves to La Venta Inn. Now, Inn is different than church, okay? Two different entities there. A church is a church. La Venta Inn is a commercial area where it's there to produce funds, money. They are a nonprofit organization. At what point do they become a commercial entity instead of a nonprofit? Sit-down dinners, they have weddings at 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 4 o'clock scheduled on their internet. 3 weddings. Their internet says, their website says that there's 300 capacity people. That's 900 people in one day going through Paseo Del Mar, in and out. Not all at the same time, because I said the 10, the 1, and the 4. That's a lot compared to everything else. I'm speaking. I was quiet. Please. I know we're outnumbered here. It's really kind of unfair that you would interrupt also. We live across the street. When those cars are in the street, and I've spoken to Steve about it, when those cars are out there, women walking with their children, strollers, elderly people in their walkers are now walking in the middle of the street instead of on the curbside, which creates a safety hazard too. There's a lot more points that I have to address. We didn't get the notice until Saturday, and I came home on Sunday. I would like if the board would continue this so we can research it and discuss it a little further, if that's okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Paulin, followed by Seta Little.
I'm Mark Paulin. I live at 504 Paseo Del Mar, excuse me, right across the street from the church. And I'm the president of the Malibu Homeowners Association, and I've been the past dozen years, I've been the chair of the church committee of the Malibu Homes Association, and I'm astonished to listen to people say there's never been a complaint made. I regularly meet with the minister or the business people at the church, regularly complain about the parking. I complain to Steve, complain to city councilmen. I mean, I have full-size Greyhound buses parked in front of my house, which I imagine if the Melbergs had Greyhound buses in front of their house up on Via Samonte, they'd be calling the city. I mean, we live with a pretty bad condition. So I met with Steve and with George Romaine, and we got together last year in August, and we tried to work out a solution to this problem. But this is with our agreement with the city, not with the CUP. But I will say that we addressed these issues and came to an agreement about the sit-down dinners. We offered to do all the things that they're asking here. We agreed to allow them to do. We just had one condition, two conditions. The noise, we said, could you get a noise meter, which Steve did, and they went out and checked noise, and they went over to Lily's house and listened to what the noise was going to be. So could they hold back on the noise? Or I don't know what the level was, and they can tell you, but there was some collaborative effort to work this out. And then we asked for control of the parking, because Minister Young would park directly in front of the church, never use a lot. And